Hi, my name is Caitlin Chesky. I'm a member of the Colonie Town Youth Bureau Advisory Board. Today, myself and Courtney Adrian, a member also, will be interviewing Sergeant Major Lee Hilt. Sergeant, what did you do when you first got home from Iraq?
The last time or the first time?
First time.
Okay, because I've been over 3 times already. I went once for Desert Storm and twice for this current operation. I think all 3 times, though, without a doubt, I first probably hugged my wife, and then hugged my kids, and then probably had my favorite meal, maybe pizza or some kind of Big Mac or something like that.
Is there anything that you would want to do if you were to go over again? Is there anything you would change from your past 3 times?
I would say not. I would say pretty much there wasn't a whole lot of decision to make regarding what I was going to do. I pretty much did whatever the job was, and the job has been different each 3 times. So I would say changing it, probably not. I wouldn't pack any different because I pack pretty light as it is anyhow. So no, I think everything just all 3 times was fine.
What did you miss from home when you were in Iraq?
There are a number of things. Some as basic as I don't know, coffee. Maybe some basic as watching the TV. Depends what unit I was in, what I was doing. If I was in the infantry side, then you don't have usually creature comforts. You're not sleeping in a bed at night. You're not sleeping, or you're not using electricity. Usually out in the field. If I was on the aircraft side, which I was last time, you have these creature comforts. You have utilities. You have heat or air conditioning and things like that available to you. But as far as what I liked probably the most when I came home was probably just, again, seeing my family, because you don't realize how much people mean to you till you're away from them for an extended period of time.
Were you able to write home?
Extensively. And I will say going back to Desert Storm, everything was pen and pencil and mail and things like that. Now we have emails and the internet and cell phones and GPSs and things like that, and it made a world of difference. I received pictures from my family at my parents' house Christmas night, about an hour after they took them over the internet this last time, just because we have digital photos and they can send them via the internet. So that was amazing.
How were your holidays changed when you were in Iraq compared to the way they're here at home, besides not having your family?
Just depends what the mission was. Sometimes it was just another day. It's unfortunate, but sometimes, depending on the tempo, depending on what you were doing, it was just another day on the job. The one thing you could count on every time for holidays was the meals. You ate very well in the chow halls on those days. Usually it was steak, maybe it was lobster, whatever. But other times it was probably just another day at the job, and you just did what you were supposed to do and moved on.
Now, I know you're retired. You retired in September of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
How many years did you serve?
29 years.
In total?
In total, yeah.
Okay. Was it worth it, all those 29 years?
Oh, I think so. I wouldn't have done it all this time if I didn't. You don't enlist for 29 straight years. You enlist for 3 or 4 or 5 years at a time. Myself, I just liked what I was doing, and at the end of each enlistment, I decided to stay or go, and I decided to stay. Truth of the matter is, I got to the position where I probably would have stayed longer. But the Marine Corps says, well, you get anywhere around 30, we throw you out. So my time was up and I had to go.
Do you miss being a Marine?
Well, we're Marines for life. It doesn't change. That's one thing that the Marine Corps prides itself on. We are a Marine for life. Whether you're active duty, reserve, or retired, you're still a Marine once you graduate boot camp. So do I miss the camaraderie and the daily or periodic interaction with Marines? Yes, I do. Do I miss putting my uniform on except for occasions like this? Yes, I do. That part of it will never change. But we are Marines for life, and I guess this is just my time to move into the next part of being a Marine.
Now, what do you do now? What is your day job?
I work for the federal government in Albany, and that's what I've done probably since I got off active duty in 1987. And that's allowed me to deploy and come back 3 times since then. Fortunately, my job was protected when I left, and I came back each time as well.
Now that you've been in Iraq, do you think that we should still be over there? Do you think it's worth it to be over there?
I do, but then again, as Marines, we try. I've never personally got involved in the logic or the political reasons or the reasons for being anywhere. We simply have the method of doing a job. Marines accomplish the mission, and it's that simple. I have a commanding officer. He says, we're going to go here and do this or that, and that's what we do. He has a commanding officer told him the same thing, and on and on and on. Marines try not to get into the rationalization of doing situations because it just confuses the situation. You pray off just to take the job, complete it, and move on.
Did anything happen to you that affected you tremendously and changed your outlook on life?
I would say nothing in particular. It was probably an overall experience of just being around. Iraq was one, Desert Storm was another. Prior to that, I'd been in Okinawa, Japan, I'd been in Korea, I'd been in the Philippines, I'd been in different parts of the world for years before that, and I always appreciated this country, just the freedoms we have. People, I guess, don't appreciate what they have until it's not there. When you go to another country, you find you don't have religious freedoms, you don't have freedom to travel about. We can go 3,000 miles in one direction, all the way to the Pacific Ocean and not have to stop for anything, other than gas. But as far as checkpoints, as far as the government's permission to do this or do that, we don't have the problem. We are free to work wherever we can get a job. We are free to go to school for wherever we want to take for school. Again, I don't think there's anything in particular that changed my mind other than the fact that each time you go away and you come back, you do appreciate more of what you have, because you took it for granted after a while.
When did you join up?
1976.
What made you choose that over just going to college?
Yeah, I guess I grew up always thinking that if someone didn't defend this country, who would? And my dad was in the Army for a while, not 29 years, but he did his time. Most of his brothers were, and I just grew up thinking it was part of nationalism, part of your patriotic duty. And again, I just looked in the mirror and said, if I'm not going to do it, who would? And it came down to that. It was that simple.
Now, I noticed the pins on your shirt. What do they all represent?
The upper part or the bottom part?
Any of them.
Okay, well, the bottom ones are just simple marksmanship badges. We have smaller ones for rifle and the bigger ones for, smaller ones for the pistol and large ones for the rifle. Every Marine shoots a rifle every year and qualifies with it every year. That's one of our main tools of our trade. We have to be proficient in it. The pistol has a lot to do with, you get to be a senior enlisted person or an officer, you qualify with the pistol. Some other jobs, you can be a junior person still required to carry the pistol as well. So that's basically what that is. It's a yearly qualification showing what I qualified on the last time I shot the rifle and the pistol. The other decorations are unit or personal awards, and they have a lot to do with our character of service, where we went, what we did, what operations we were involved in, and things like that. So I could probably spend about a week or Tuesdays explaining these all to you all, but basically it comes down to what we've done and where we've been and things like that.
Okay. What are the differences to you that you see when you think of Desert Storm versus Iraq?
It was enormous. I alluded to the internet before. I mean, we went to Desert Storm in 1990. The internet wasn't around yet, at least not to the extent it is now. It was out there somewhere, but it wasn't in every other household. Cell phones were not around. GPS. There's more technology in a wristwatch GPS unit today than was when we went to war with. We had a global positioning satellite system then in Desert Storm was as big as a shoebox. Now there's more technology, like I said, on a wristwatch. The speed of information gathering is out there. The communication we had, most of the missions we had came over the internet. Ironically, in the old days, it came over the radio. And then radio is subject to a lot of, I won't say maybe tapping or spying. When you still have to worry about that on the internet, there's a lot more safeguards you can put on the internet than that. So I would say just the technology alone has been enormous. The equipment, not to mention the electronic side, but the equipment alone, our rifles, our utilities, our vehicles, just the tanks, you name it, night vision goggles. The stuff has probably leaped, probably in the last 10 years, probably more than it did in 50 years prior to that. It's enormous, the technology is on the field today.
Now, tapping into your five senses, for you, if you were to see something, like a video that somebody has from their trip over to Iraq, would it trigger any memories?
I would say dust storms. I mean, to this day, if I could be on the ocean and the wind comes up and creates a dust devil. We had dust storms that would just blow up on you in probably 30 seconds notice and completely paralyze an entire operation. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Communications would go down, vehicles were shut down, air cleaners on planes or trucks or whatever would just clog up on the spot. I think the sandstorm to this day, I think it's still, if I smell that powdery talcum sand. Just, I would think if I closed my eyes, I would think I was back in the desert. Other senses, your ears are always listening for sounds and things like that. I don't have any knee-jerk reactions to loud noises, nothing like that. But just regular, sounds of maybe an aircraft or maybe the smell of jet fuel or something like that. I go to the Albany airport today. I could close my eyes and probably picture being back in Al-Assad, which is the air base we were on in Iraq. So things like that, they're going to be there forever, I guess.
To you, being retired, it is a great thing to be, but would you rather be back in service?
Yeah. Like I said before, it's kind of like the old fire horse, and the bell, the whistle goes off, and you still want to run to the fire. I did. I liked it. I can't say I had a bad day the whole 29 years I was in. It wasn't by any means a cakewalk or fun and games all the time, but it's the job, and if you realize that's what the job is, you have no problems with that. So I miss it. I miss it a lot. But again, it's just you get to be that position in your life where it takes probably a younger, faster individual to do those things. And it's time to move out of the way and let the young guys take over. And besides, the Marine Corps is a way of promoting from within as the hierarchy moves out. So I'm out here today, but there's a new guy down there tomorrow just doing my job, or yesterday that took over my job, and that's what we do.
Now, your son Liam is enlisted.
He is.
And what did he just finish?
He graduated boot camp November 16th. My wife and I and our 2 other children went down to see him graduate. That was an experience. I hadn't been on that island since '77 when I graduated myself, and it was quite an experience going back. And he came home for leave, 10 days leave, and he went back to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and didn't stay there too long. I actually brought him right back for recruiter's duty. So he's on recruiter's duty now until the 26th of December. Then he'll go back down there. He is going into what's known as NBC, Nuclear, Biological, Chemical Warfare. And he's mainly going to be our detection, our defensive mechanism person that's on deck, that anytime there's a threat or potential threat for any one of those 3 agents, nuclear, biological, chemical warfare, he'll be detection. He'll tell us what we need to defend ourselves in, the different varieties of weapon we have to worry about, and again, how to defend ourselves against that.
Was it nice for you to know that he was traveling in your footsteps?
It's nice now. I was surprised when he did it. I was probably the last one in the house to know he was even considering that. I interrupted a phone call last December, matter of fact, from a recruiter calling the house. And I asked him, why are you calling there? And he said, I've been talking to Liam for about a year and a half now. And then I mentioned that to my wife. She says, yeah, I know. I told him to talk to your dad before you do anything. And then I mentioned my daughter. Do you know he's talking to the Marines? And she said, oh, yeah, he's been doing that for about a year and a half now. So I'm proud of him. He did well. I never thought he could not do well. I knew he was level-headed enough that he's not the individual that would start something and then complain that, why did you let me get into this, or I can't handle this, or I got to change my mind. He never did that. He never did that with anything. So I'm proud of him, and he's only his first 6 months in right now, but I'm sure he'll do just fine the rest of the time.
Now, is there a chance that he could be sent over to Iraq?
It's not a chance. I think it's more likely than not. The Marine Corps is like a lot of the service. They're deployed in Iraq in a big way. I mean, we're probably, I won't say stretched thin, but the majority of our assets do go over to Iraq at least one time or another. So, in as much as he's home here this Christmas, I fully expect him to be deployed next Christmas. That's just the way it is. You're here for one holiday, and you're probably going for the next one.
Did you like your active duty or your reserve, being a recruiter here?
Well, I was a recruiter. That's a good point. I was a recruiter when I was active duty, and that was the early part of the 80s. I enjoyed it. Anytime you can represent an organization that you're proud of, and you're representing that, it kind of makes you feel good. I mean, you're it. I mean, somebody looks out and sees the Marines, and they see me, and I'm it. Good or bad, I'm it. So I think I like that. I like the idea that I was entrusted with the reputation of the Marine Corps and to show it is what it is. The reserve side has a lot to offer as well because, again, I mean, I was active duty for about 11 years. I never went to a combat zone the whole time. I got out, went to reserves. I remember telling my wife, it's only reserves. It's 1 weekend a month. They don't go anywhere, do anything. It's pretty low-key. And then 11 months later, I was going to Desert Storm, so that didn't work too well. So she was a little surprised at that one. And since I've been, like I said, 3 times I've been deployed just in the reserve units. So to like one more than the other, they all have their benefits. I like the active duty side because I definitely traveled more. It was a full-time Marine position, and I did things every day of the week that I don't do now. Like I said, well, now I'm retired, but even the reserve side, you only do it 1 weekend a month unless you get activated and things like that. So bottom line is, I think they all have their benefits. I liked them both, and I went to reserves because it was time for a change at that time. And so if I liked the active duty side, and if it still fit at that time, I would have stayed there. It didn't fit at that time, so I went to reserve side, and it's that easy.
If you could tell an incoming recruiter that is trying to tell students why to enlist, what would you say?
For children today, I call them children, 'cause there's a lot. I mean, I know you're a high school senior and you got a lot going on, but there's so much ahead of you. There's so much ahead of you, and what life has to throw at you, and the opportunities you have, it's going to be just that. It's going to be an opportunity. The better you prepared for that, the more apt you have, again, those tools in your chest. The more you have available to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to do, the better you'll do. So I think, if nothing else, I fully believe that for 2 or 3 or 4 years right out of high school, the Marine Corps and any service offers so much to a child today. It's just nowhere else is somebody bring you in and give you lessons on alcohol abuse, drug interdiction, educational opportunities, being responsible, being proud of what you're doing, physical fitness. I mean, there's so many issues facing America's youth today that they're not being addressed. If you put 3 or 4 years in the military, you're going to address 99% of those issues. And the person coming out the other side, whether they go 1 tour or 29 years like I did, the person coming out the other side is going to be a better individual than went in the front door. And if you can do that, you're going to make yourself a better person there, and that person's going to be better off to do in life than somebody not go through that experience.
All right, well, thank you for letting me interview today. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Courtney Adrian. She will be interviewing Mr. Hilt next. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Courtney Adrian. I'm a senior at Shaker High School, and I'm, as well as Caitlin, part of the Youth Bureau, and I'm here today interviewing Sergeant Major Lee Hilt, continuing with Caitlin's interview. Hello, Sergeant Major Hilt.
Hello, Courtney.
I was wondering, what kind of combat did you see when you were over? You had mentioned you were deployed 3 times, and I was wondering what sort of jobs you had while you were there. Was it a desk job, or was it more in the field?
Sure. The first time was for Desert Storm. That was in 1990 through 91, and at that time I was a platoon sergeant. I was a staff sergeant at that time, and my platoon was a weapons platoon, and I was a section leader for a machine gun sections. Basically, we are the field guys, the grunts, the guys out there doing offensive, defensive operations, and our job at that time was to congregate in Saudi Arabia. And then on ground day, the day we kicked off and went through the border, we went through Kuwait, and our job was to work our way up through, at that time, it was Kuwait City. And that's where we ended up. That was the first time. The last 2 times was for this current operation, Iraqi Freedom. And I've been a squadron sergeant major with a C-130 unit out of Newburgh, New York, down in Stewart. And basically, a squadron sergeant major was a senior enlisted on deck. And I'm kind of joined at the hip with the commanding officer, and we pretty much, he handles the mission, and I support him in every way I can to accomplish a mission. My main focus is on troop morale, welfare, and issues, whether it's promotions or pay or health issues or family issues back home, whatever it takes to keep the person focused and on the job at hand. That's my job to do.
I have a question about maybe the sorts of people you were in charge of and what you did if maybe the person you were dealing with was not as committed to the job as you were, or maybe they struggled a little bit more in the discipline areas. How did you deal with that person?
Well, that is one of the things a senior enlisted guy does. We are charged with the discipline issues of the unit, whether I'm a first sergeant in a company, which is a smaller than a squadron, or you get to more larger units where you're talking about a sergeant major billet. I would say, for the most part, you're always going to have bumps in the road. You always have some people that are they have a bad day, for whatever reason it is. But typically, you find that at least with my Marines, most of them, if not all of them, are committed to what they're doing. They wouldn't be there. We have a a way of identifying issues early on, and when it comes time to deploy, it's not, you don't take the person that screwed up. If you have a person that necessarily can't be on time or can't, is not a person you would trust in a combat environment, then you're probably going to lead that person home. The bottom line is we do, that's part of the leadership, is to know your men or your women, and when it comes time to putting a roster together to take people overseas, you need to look at the people with a wide eye and decide whether it's not this is the person you're going to give a rifle to in the middle of the night and let them be making life or death decisions. We don't do that back home. We do that in a combat environment. So I would say discipline issues, I had very few, and if they were anything I had to deal with, there wasn't anything that would even rise to the level of anybody else's concern. It's just something we worry about. It might be a nickel-dime issue, like being late for something, or not being in uniform. But it's usually, it's a lack of discipline or attention to detail that usually leads to a bigger problem. So typically, like I said, I usually have a way of noticing the little things, and they have a way of avoiding the big things if you take care of the little things first.
I hadn't realized that you were allowed to choose who you would like to bring over with you and allowed to leave others home.
Well, it's not so much of a choice, it's more of a readiness thing. It's no different than somebody's not physically able. If someone fell and they broke their leg and they're being rehab for 6 months or 12 months, you obviously couldn't take that person. So physically as well as mentally, as well as psychologically, if a person's not ready to do the job, you don't really necessarily want to have that person with you. It's not always a matter of taking everyone that wants to go. It's the one that can do the job. It's all about the mission.
Who is the youngest person that you've ever had to work with?
17 years old. You can be 17 to 20 years old. You can be initial enlistment into the Marine Corps. So I've had some 17-year-olds. Yeah.
Fairly young.
Fairly young. Yeah.
They referred to the war as a war like they've never seen before as far as tactics go. How difficult is that? Even compared to Desert Storm, I know that was a bit more modern, but would you agree with that statement or would you disagree?
What was the quote again?
It was a war like we've never seen before as far as tactics.
Well, I think any war is going to be different than any prior war. I don't think anything stays the same. I think technology, like I mentioned before, is so advanced with our side this time. It's just every day. I mean, it's a changing evolution. The battlefield changes every day anyhow, whether it's this war or another war or something. If this is different, it's probably more to do with our technology. It's probably more to do with the various issues we're dealing with over there. We have several countries located in very close proximity to each other, and most of them don't get along with each other. So that's probably something that's different with this time. But as far as the difference goes, I think everyone's different. There's never going to be any, I think whatever happens 10, 20, 30 years from now is going to be different from this one here. So for me, it's just a matter of just changing with the plan and then moving on with it.
How do you deal with orders you don't want to give or receive?
Well, we don't, that's why we call them orders. We usually don't get into whether we like them or not. It's not an option. There's 170,000 people in that region right now. Could you imagine what it would be like if 170,000 people had to second guess every word that came down, we're going to do this or do that? You'd have total anarchy. Not to mention you throw in the fact that it's night, people carrying live weapons, you're tired, you're cold, you're hot, the fog of war, as we call it, is well in place. You can't have a whole lot of indecisiveness going on. So pretty much that's why we call them orders. They're usually already thought out by someone competent, and when they come down, it's just a matter of just doing them.
I had one last question on a more personal note. How does your family feel about when you're not home? How does that take a toll on them?
It's hard. It's very hard. I think that's probably one of the most unappreciated sacrifices I think military people make that I think the rest of the country doesn't understand. I mean, here we are a week from Christmas right now, and what's everybody thinking about back home? Decorating, shopping, last minute wrapping presents, who are you going to visit on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, traditions, what you did last year and the year before and the year before that. You've got, like I said, 170,000 people that aren't home for these holidays this year. You got 170,000 families back home, whether it's the mom or the dad or their wife or the kids, they're not there. So much for traditions, so much for what we did last year and the year before that and the year before that. It's not happening. And with that, I mean, this is Christmas and it's a big deal. but it happens every day. When I left the last time, I left in September, August actually, and I didn't come back till February. So, there was a lot. There was kids' first day back to school. I wasn't there for that. There was Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. But this is what you do. It's unfortunate, but the business we're in, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-week business, and you necessarily can't go home on the holidays and expect the bad guys to stay on their own side of the border. They're going to do what they can do whenever they can do it. So it's a 24-hour job, and you always got to be on guard for that. So I would say it's pretty much the holidays and the families, and it's a big thing this time of year. But people need to realize that that goes around year-round.
You use the word bad guys, and I've heard other people who are veterans use the word bad guys too. Why do you think you lump it all into bad guys? Is that just how you see it?
Well, again, you can use a political persuasion question again. I don't call them Iraqis or Iranians or insurgents or terrorists, whoever they are, whatever they are, wherever you are, if they're the one that's coming to hurt you or whatever, they're the bad guy, and that makes it easy for me.
Anyone who's coming to hurt you. How do you deal about loss within your job, with whether friends or colleagues? How do you deal with that? Is it just another part of the job, or does it affect you emotionally?
I would say, I've heard that before, and that part, I think, probably, that's one of the, I said before, people don't appreciate, when people are away because of holidays, things like that. They don't realize there's 170,000 people out there. When we lose somebody in combat, whether they get hurt or whether they're, God forbid, they're killed, with the exception of the family, I don't think anybody feels a loss greater than the person's fellow Marine or sailor or soldier. I mean, you worked with this person 7 days a week. You live with them 7 days a week. It's not an 8 to 5 job. You don't do something 8 hours a day and go home. You're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You eat, drink, sleep. You do everything with that person for the whole time. And all of a sudden that person's not there. It bothers you. It hurts. Personally, it bothers me. Professionally, you obviously can't stop. You obviously can't let the mission be distracted from what you're doing there. Whatever you're there for, it needs to continue. But I would say that it hurts, and it hurts a lot, and that's why we have days like Memorial Day and Veterans Day and Flag Day, because you need to stop, pause, and remember who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And don't forget for 1 minute that freedom is not free.
How do you deal with the fact that you may be one of those people? Do you think about the fact that that could possibly be you?
I never have. I don't know why, but I never have. I've always found myself in a position where I'm in charge of the person that got hurt, and it's my job to medevac them, to get them out of the area, or just to treat them. Maybe it's a slight, maybe they cut themselves on razor wire or barbed wire. It's just a matter of bandaging them up, getting a corpsman to take care of them. Or maybe it's more serious, and you had to get them medevac out of the field. I've never considered for a minute that it would be me, or I had to worry about that, because I guess if it is me, then somebody else is going to take care of me. If it's not me, then I have someone else to take care of in the meantime. But I've never considered it for a fact that, if it could be me, whatever. I prepared my family. We've talked about that extensively, prior to going away and when I was away and when I came back. But I've never, when I've actually been in the field or doing something that was dealing with that kind of thing, I never looked at myself as ever being the person getting hurt. Never.
Do you worry about that for your sons?
Yeah. Again, I'm a parent, I'm a dad, and I have a way of calling my Marines kids. I've been criticized for that on occasion, but most of the time I've been the senior guy, at least the last 10 years. I've been the senior person on deck and the enlisted side, and I look at it as my subordinates and my people I got to take care of, and my kids or whatever. And I do worry. I worry about all of them. But with my son, he's always been a logical, level-headed kid. He's never, ever come back and say, I shouldn't have done this, or I could have done that, or why'd you let me do this? He's pretty much, he makes a decision. It's his bone to pick. Like I say, your bed to lay, and he's either going to accomplish it the way he should or not, but that's his decision. So I worry about him, but on the same note, I know enough about him that he'll do what he has to do, and he'll do the right thing. And if he does ever get hurt, and it'll be something that couldn't have been avoided, he would have done what he was supposed to do.
How do you feel about the war in the media? Do you feel as if it's being portrayed realistically, or can you not really understand the war unless you're there?
I I would take that latter as being more the rule. You cannot understand the good, the effectiveness, the pride, the professionalism of the people over it. You cannot appreciate any of that until you really see it. I do think, unfortunately, that there is agendas at play when people do report certain facts. They're not always. I mean, I was there on more than one occasion. When I was there, I was in the same area where something was being reported, and to read about it or hear it, come across the radio, I say, I mean, what I saw is not what happened. Not that grim detail. You would think every day that there's people getting, 170,000 people, there's not a safe spot in that country or that region. That's wrong. That's the opposite. There's definitely some hot areas, just like there are in the United States. I mean, you have neighborhoods in the United States where they're more dangerous than parts of that region over there in Baghdad right now. But, it doesn't get the airtime because I guess if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. I would say every time I've been over there, I am more impressed with what goes on. I can't tell you more pride that I have for my Marines, other than they love doing what they're doing. They're good at what they do. And you mentioned discipline issues before. They're never for a lack of not trying. They're never for a lack of really not caring what they do. It's just a bad day some days. But no, I tell everyone to take the media with a grain of salt. But if you really want to know what's going on, talk to someone that's been in the uniform, been over there a few times, and they will tell you. They will tell you.
What are some maybe memorable, good or bad moments? What sticks out in your mind when you think of all the times that you'd been there? Maybe funny things, maybe not so funny things.
I'll tell you one thing we did last time I was there. I was personally proud of it. Again, emails are a big thing now with the internet. It was a young lady, probably a couple years older than herself, and she was on a convoy. She drove one of these big 7-ton trucks from one place to the other, and that was her job. It's a dangerous job. I mean, some of these convoys are getting hit a lot, but she drove her convoy, and she wrote in her email. It was a letter home to her parents, and somebody took a letter and actually published it, put it on the web, and she was relaying that on one of her trips back one night, she was tired and she's just getting home in time, hopefully for chow, dinner before they get secure at night. And she came to the checkpoint, and her commanding officer and her sergeant major were out there checking IDs, checking the vehicles. And she usually sees another person her same rank or age out there in the middle of the night checking this stuff. And here's a senior guy and a enlisted senior officer out there checking IDs. And she couldn't understand what was going on. And she did what she's supposed to do, and good evening, sir, good evening, sergeant major, and she moved on. Then she went to the chow hall, and every command and staff member of their unit was behind the chow line, serving the chow, wiping the tables down, basically doing the job that, her equivalents would normally be doing. And she finally realized that it was a holiday, and somebody recommended to the commanding officer or sergeant major that, you know what, maybe we should get the guys a day off. So I heard that, and it was just right before Christmas, right about this time when I was over in 2004. And I remember going to my commanding officer and said, you know what, we should do this. We have people on guard post every night. It's a 24-hour day post. We have several positions, 2 people on each one. We have people working in chow halls. We have people working on the radio watch. We have probably dozens of troops working in one position 24 hours a day. Why don't we relieve them for a 24-hour period, say from 001 Christmas morning, which is 1 minute after midnight on Christmas Eve, till midnight on Christmas. Why don't we just do that? He thought it was a great idea, and he did what most commanding officers do. He looked at me and said, Sergeant Major, get it done. And I did, and it was amazing how much my officers and the staff, responded to it. And for that 24-hour period, these kids got the day off. We just basically said, whatever you normally do, you don't have to do it. And it worked so good on Christmas. We did the same thing on New Year's Day. And same thing, from 1 o'clock in 1 minute after midnight on New Year's Day till midnight on New Year's Day, none of these junior troops were manning these posts.
So what do they do in that free time?
I don't know. I think they probably play with their Game Boys, or they probably got on the internet or emails. We had a phone bank. They probably did a lot of stuff they wanted to do. Probably a lot of them slept, because sometimes sleeping is not that prevalent. I don't know what they did, but whatever it was their time, and for 24 hours they got to say, you know what, this is my 24 hours. I'm going to do what I need to do, and they did.
Is there maybe a more solemn, outstanding moment?
Yeah, one more. I'll give you. There's definitely one more. This was in 2003 when the war first started. I mentioned I'm a squadron sergeant major. We have C-130 airplanes. They have a litany of missions they do. They're aerial refuelers, which means they can refuel planes in the sky. They also we hauled hundreds of tons of cargo, probably thousands of tons of cargo, ammunition, supplies, water, you name it, we hauled it. We also had the burden of, not so, I'll say burden, but not so glamorous task of handling medevacs. That's when people get hurt and we had to take them out of airplanes. I remember one night in particular, again, the war was probably going about 2-3 weeks, and we landed well up in Iraq, and we were picking up dozens of kids, a lot of them on stretchers and some with a couple IVs going in them and things like that, and some were hurt pretty bad. I remember one guy in particular, some I don't know, he's probably 18, 19 years old. He was hurt, but I don't remember exactly where, but I know he was limping and he was bandaged up, but he was walking. And I remember walking up the gangplank, coming into the airplane, and I'm helping where I can, but mostly I'm getting the heck out of the way so I don't get in people's way, and they're carrying stretchers on, things like that. And he came up to me and he just said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, thank you. I really appreciate the ride. Us guys need a hand once in a while." And I remember thinking, you're thinking me? I mean, here you are shot up. Here these kids are all shot up. I'm sitting there, I don't have a scratch on me. I'm sleeping on sheets every night. I'm eating in the chow hall because our airplanes do that. We have way traveling hundreds of miles every day. For this kid who probably could get a chip on his shoulder real easy, real quick, the fact that he's hurt, and could sit there and say, you know what, you and your Marine Corps stink or something like that. He didn't. As much as he was hurt, as much as his friends were hurt, as much as sacrifice he was making that day, which compared to what I was doing was nothing. I mean, what I did paled in comparison to these kids. I mean, again, they were young and they were getting paid by a quarter of what I was getting paid, but he had, the pride and discipline and the confidence in what he was doing to thank me for a ride. And I was like, I was in awe. This kid, I couldn't. And I sat with him the rest of the ride and I talked to him. That just took me back.
Do you mind if I ask about the pay? You mentioned pay. It just brought up an interesting question.
Sure.
You don't have to give me your salary in exact numbers, but what does the average soldier make?
Well, it's a double question because what you make when you're stateside is different from what you make when you're deployed. When you go into a combat zone, what you make is tax-free. Also, you have additional pay, which hazardous duty pay is tacked on top of that. You have family separation if you're married, you're away from your kids and wife. There's other things that are added on when you're in a combat environment. To put a number on it, I would probably be, I would probably say, honestly, I'd probably screw it up if I said it, because I know what there's, there's 9 pay grades of enlisted rank, there's 10 pay grades of officer rank. To take the average pay, I don't think I could do that. Are the junior troops paid enough? No, I would say not. Am I paid probably too much for what I did? In my book, yeah, I think I am. I mean, again, that's the job. We don't dicker with it. It's an order, and we pretty much do what we're told. But if I could, I would probably change the pay scale and maybe make a little more heavy end in the bottom and not so much on the top.
That's interesting. Thank you. You talk a lot about rank and how we were discussing earlier before we began taping, how difficult it is to get promoted. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it wasn't so much difficult. It's just that there are standards, especially in the Marine Corps side, and you need to determine is you keep up or you get out. And whatever the requirement is, as a Marine, you need to keep doing that. It doesn't get any easier when you get older. I mean, I'm a sergeant major. I'm as high as you're going to get as a enlisted side, but I'm still required to take the same physical fitness test that every Lance Corporal's taking, or PFC, or prior my son. He's a PFC. He's 18 years old. I still have to take the same physical fitness test he has to take. I still have to pass it. I still have to fire the same rifle he shoots every year in the rifle range, and I have to qualify. Your weight standards are probably a big challenge for people that get older in life, because the pounds don't blow away so easy. They kind of way build it up at you. So the rank is twofold. It's very competitive because you're competing with people that want to do more than the average person, so they're going to work a little harder at it. But on the same note, you have the challenge of just life wearing away at you. And sometimes the rank, like I said, it's a test. And some people don't always pass the test, and that's when they go away. And again, it's time to move up or you move out. That's it.
People discuss that the next time there's a draft, that females will probably be included in the draft. And how do you feel about that?
I've had female Marines with me in every deployment I've ever been on, every stateside mission I've ever been on, active or reserve, combat or peacetime. I have no problem whatsoever with females in the military. I think the women I've worked with have been more professional than most women I know anywhere, because they're against the grain. I mean, face it, the Marine Corps, like the military, is pretty much a male-dominated area. And for them to be there, they know that they're going to be judged as a Marine, not as a man, not as a woman, not as a man, not as tall or short. They're going to be judged as a Marine, and they need to really want it to maintain that, and they do. And like I said, for me to draft, if there is a draft and there is women drafted, they are just another Marine in the ranks, and no special treatment, no more, no less is going to be required of them than the male Marine.
Does that include physical things? I'd always wondered about that. That, like, there comes a point in your life when you have to realize that men are physically stronger than women, and does that pose a problem for the draft? Like, there will probably be less females drafted simply for physical, genetic reasons.
That's a good point. There is a difference in physical standards with the Marine Corps. Women, like I said, I mentioned before that I take a physical fitness test every year. My son does too. The male Marines take the same test. Female Marines take an equivalent test. They still run 3 miles, but instead of doing pull-ups like the men do, they do what's known as a flex arm hang. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. The men still do crunchers, which is a modified sit-up. The women still do crunchers as well. So I would say the women, physically, we're not talking about bench pressing 250, 300 pounds here. The test a man takes, a woman can take as well and do just as well at it. And they do. They do very well. Like I said, the only difference is the pull-ups. One's pull-up and the other's a flex arm hang. And matter of fact, my daughter went to track meet last week down in New York City, and I guess there was a Marine recruit down there, and he had a pull-up bar there. And some of the kids were trying it, and she maxed out the flex arm hang. It was 70 seconds she did it, and so she's already doing 100 points in that area right there. So it could be done.
So are the numbers the same? You talked about running maybe 3 miles in a certain amount of time. Is the time for a man and a woman the same?
That's a good point. It is 3 miles. Matter of fact, that changed. It used to be women ran 1.5 miles, and now they're running 3. And guys always ran 3, so that did change. But the time, they do get a little more time. Again, it's based on your age as well. Me being a 51-year-old sergeant major, if I ran a PFT tomorrow, normally you need to get it done in less than 28 minutes. Maxing is 18 minutes, but you can't be any slower than 28 minutes. But for an older guy like me, you get somewhere around 30, 35 minutes, which is pretty, in my book, that's pretty bad, because I can walk probably that fast. So I never worried about the 28 or the 30 minutes. I was always down around the lower 20s. That was my goal. But the women, their run time is graduated, again, for their physical abilities, like you mentioned.
I've heard other military personnel discuss on the news that they would not like a draft, that people who are drafted don't have the morale that other people do. And would you agree with that statement?
I don't know what the reason is. If it's, what was your word, morale?
Morale.
Okay, that's probably a good point. That's probably a good point. I wasn't drafted. I joined in '76. The draft was ended before that, post-Vietnam time. So I would say I would not want people drafted. Again, if it's an order, we're going to do it, if we like it or not. Personally, and probably because I'm retired now, I probably would tell you that if I had people that were drafted and they didn't want to be there, maybe they wouldn't be as professional as they should be. Maybe I would have to worry about that more doing their job. Maybe I would have more discipline issues. I don't now, and I can say it's because people want to be there. And if they don't, at the end of their 2 or 3 or 4 year enlistment, they get out. If they stay in, then obviously they want to be there. So I would say a draft, if it comes to that, we'll deal with it. I'd rather not, but if it comes to that, we'll deal with it.
I have one final summarizing question.
Okay.
If you had to do it all again, would you?
Oh, heck yeah. You can, oh yeah. And my only regret is I went in '76 and I got out in 1987. I was out for 25 months, and then I went back in again. That's why the math probably doesn't line up from '76 to now, having 29 years in, because I had 2 years of broken time in there. My difference would be I wouldn't have that broken time. I would stay in for 30 straight, and then I would have got out in 2006 with 30 as opposed to getting out in 2007 with 29. That's it.
So your only regret is leaving.
We're leaving at the 2-year mark there, leaving for those 2 years.
That's a pretty good recommendation of the Army then, I suppose. The Marines, anyway.
It is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hilt.
You're welcome.